Hello there classic and vintage golf fans. This is part one of a two-part video in which we'll discuss the history of one of the great American manufacturers and then review a set of clubs by them. In part two, I'll take those clubs to the course and play 9 holes and see how I get on. I've been meaning to cover an American club manufacturer for quite a while now, and here we are. Who better than McGregor? We'll take a brief look at one of the greatest ever club manufacturers who in their heyday produced some of the most beautiful clubs ever, gave us some very significant innovations in equipment, and not only that, they were very well thought after by all the professional golfers. Ideally, I'd like to have made a proper in-depth study of McGregor, but their history is very long and their club inventory is huge. Several books could easily be filled on the subject. As the Classic Golf Club's channel videos are generally no more than 20 minutes long and are in England with limited access to both clubs and written materials, I'm going to have to make this a brief summary. The company began as a shoe last manufacturer back in 1829 in Dayton, Ohio, and golf was far from the minds of the founders, the Crawford brothers, Archibald and Zeba. The process of making shoe lasts used what are known as copying lathes. These are lathes which follow a pattern, often made of metal, and turn out a replica in wood. The company was very successful, and 2 new partners joined over time. Firstly, John McGregor around 1874, and then Edward Canby around 1886, and the company became known as Crawford, McGregor and Canby. John McGregor was a Scotsman by birth and a keen golfer, and it's no surprise that the company ventured into the golf business, especially when Edward Canby recognised the potential for the business in the booming sport of golf. Up until the late 1800s, the heads for woods had been formed and shaped from the rough block by hand using saws, chisels and files. But Crawford, McGregor and Canby's experience with the copying lathe meant that they were soon turning out huge numbers of identical heads, much faster and at lower cost than had been possible before. They also pioneered the use of persimmon wood, which grew locally, and was superior to the woods that had commonly been used up until that time, which most commonly were beech and fruit woods such as pear. The business flourished, supplying not just American club makers and professionals, and within a small number of years they were exporting 100,000 heads annually to the UK. Golf was still in its infancy in America, and the connection to Scotland, the home of golf, was an asset. The spelling of John's McGregor was also common in Ireland, and so to put a stamp of Scottishness on the clubs, the spelling was changed to Mac with an A, Gregor, and subsequently all clubs were sold under the McGregor name, with the company eventually becoming McGregor Golf in 1944. Golf club manufacture soon overtook shoe lasts and was making much more money. Shoe last production ceased at the end of the 1920s. For a while, retail sales were the biggest market, but the Great Depression killed that, and McGregor faced bankruptcy. In 1934, they were acquired by sporting goods giant Goldsmith. With retail sales non-existent, McGregor focused again on sales to professionals who were still doing business. They began to sign up leading professionals of the day, starting with Tommy Armour and Tony Penner. In 1939, with the help of Tony Penner, they made 3 crucial signings: Jimmy Demaret, Byron Nelson and Ben Hogan. With names like these on their clubs, the orders flowed in, and from 1947 until 1960, more touring pros played McGregor than all the others combined. After World War II, McGregor relocated to Cincinnati. Tony Penner was a great designer of golf clubs, and in 1950 he introduced one of his most recognisable clubs, and a favourite of mine, the MT Tourney with the wingback design. In 1958, McGregor was sold to Brunswick, the giant of 10-pin bowling. Brunswick quickly decided it needed to up sticks again and move golf production to Albany, Georgia. However, the first few years were a mess. A new workforce, new accounting system and a disgruntled sales force meant that the company struggled to keep afloat. But then in 1962, they managed to sign one Jack Nicklaus for an at the time eye-watering $100,000 deal over 5 years. Things now looked set to return to the days of plenty, but clouds were forming on the horizon. Golf had been booming, but so had the manufacturers, and they'd got ahead of demand, producing more clubs than the public wanted to buy. Unsold stock had to be liquidated, and discount retailers were only too happy to buy it, and then undercutting the club professionals, who were understandably very annoyed. McGregor's pro shop equipment was made to a much higher standard than retail, but your typical golfer saw only the price difference and happily bought into the discount ranges. Towards the end of the 1960s, Karsten Solheim's Ping were starting to make inroads with their investment cast cavity back equipment, which was cleverly marketed. On top of this, a frustrated Tony Penner left the company and started up on his own. McGregor's management policy seemed to be to replace people on a rolling basis, and quality control issues were a major and continuing headache at the new Albany plant. In 1978, Brunswick sold McGregor to the Wicks Corporation, which started a chain of rapid changes of ownership until it was acquired in 2016 by Dick's Sporting Goods, and then in 2020 was purchased by Simon Millington, CEO of Golf Brands. They also own the Ram and Ben Hogan names. A slow re-entry into the golf market for McGregor has begun, initially with some boxed package sets, but now as a direct-to-customer seller, and they've introduced some new iron ranges, including the MT86 in 2023. Let's hope that they can rise like the phoenix from the ashes. As I said at the start, the number of club designs that McGregor have produced is massive. Rather than try and describe them all, which would take hours, here are just a few of my favourites. Let's start with some woods, as these were where McGregor found their fame. First up, we have the very attractive Chieftain model, first appearing as hickory shafted clubs, but continuing into the steel shafted age, although sadly many of the steel shafted examples remaining are being converted to hickory shafts. The white parts shown here are apparently ivory. Different times back then. Now the stunning Master model, one of the most expensive woods McGregor produced, and as such it was not a big seller, but today it's highly prized by collectors, and it's easy to see why. The earliest woods made for golf are called long-nose clubs due to the slender shape and long heads. The change to the shape we know today was gradual, but McGregor are accepted as finally giving us the compact-shaped wood that we're so familiar with now. It was developed by Will Syme, a Scotsman who joined McGregor in 1912. He called it the Bap driver, as it was inspired by the shape of a biscuit his mother baked, which was called a bap. The model was introduced in 1921 and was an instant hit with buyers, becoming McGregor's best seller for 15 years. The industry followed suit with that style of club. Moving on now to what many regard as McGregor's finest products, their woods from the 1940s and 1950s. These were the clubs that professional golfers sought out and cherished right up until the 1980s. They were made with old-growth persimmon, which had tight grain, giving a dense and heavy block. This old-growth persimmon had almost been exhausted by the 1960s. Incidentally, I came across an excellent summary of this most desirable period for classic McGregor wood collectors at the web address shown below and linked in the description. I'm extremely grateful to a fellow collector and enthusiast from America who supplied the pictures for the next two models. They are stunning. Beginning with the Tommy Armour 693. At first glance it's a very simple design. Single colour insert, 4 screws in diamond pattern and a swept sole plate. But it all comes together in perfect balance to create a wonderful looking club. And then we have the Tourney M85W with Iomatic insert. The Tourney MT irons were already my favourite design of irons ever, and it's no surprise that the M85W now sits alongside them as my favourite woods. Here's a group of 3. Is there a finer picture in classic golf collecting? As well as the woods, McGregor produced some stunning looking irons, including, as already mentioned, my favourite, the Tourney MT from 1950. They also led the way in face treatments, with the flame ceramic treatment seen here on a 1961 model. This was actually developed by NASA, and Tony Penner was amazed when the USGA approved it for use on golf club faces. It's also used here on the very stylish RMT1 with part-coated face. Copper finishes were also popular in the colour chrome models. To finish, we have the VIP by Nicholas, introduced in 1971, and a very good example of a muscle-back design. I haven't mentioned putters, although McGregor produced and sold many, but I really should mention one, which became McGregor's best-selling club of all time, the Response ZT, as wielded so effectively by Jack Nicklaus to win the 1986 Masters tournament. I believe that the ZT stood for Zero Twist, so it's probably the first commercially successful extreme MOI putter, and it sold in very large numbers, 350,000 in just 3 years. Well, that concludes this short look at McGregor and some of their clubs. Let's now take a look at the feature clubs that I'm going to play later on in the video. Well, in the usual fashion, let's start with the woods. I'll take this one out, which is the 2 wood. It's an aluminium face. The varnish has yellowed a little bit, so it looks slightly brassy, but it is an aluminium face. On the top there, we can see the model MT Tourney, and on the sole we have the McGregor signature and MTW3, which tells us that it's a 3 flex in the shaft. If I bring the shaft round, we can see obviously there a 3, which is a softer flex. 1 was the stiffest, 2 was the next, but yeah, that's the 4 as well. We can see they've got a slight colour graduation there, a lightish band and 2 darker bands, so a bit of stain. We've got red top and bottom grooves. The grooves are equally spaced, and we've got a 5 screw insert there. So there we are. As you can see though, they are a little bit battered. The driver's got a bit of wood loss there. It won't affect playability, but they do need working over. So they're the woods. I'm not going to be playing these though, particularly at this time of year. It's very cold outside, the ground is very muddy, so I'm not going to want to take these out, even if they had been restored. In fact, I'm just going to play with irons today. So they're the woods, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Very nice set. Let's look at the irons. Okay, here are the irons then. Same MT Tourney model as the woods, released in 1968. We don't see many McGregor sets in the UK. I bought these a while ago. They're not in the greatest condition, as we'll see when we start to look at them. But I've got 2-through-2 pitching wedge in the set. So if we start with the 2 iron, that's one of the better condition ones. All the ferrule rings are there. MT Tourney, and we can see there MTR2. So that's a 2 flex on the shaft. If we look at that, you can see the 2 there, MacGregor Tourney. So it's a little bit stiffer than the woods. MTR2 stamped on there as well, so it was obviously intended to be an MTR2 all along. Nice face on them, MT boxing in the grooves, frosted face, and on the sole we've got the McGregor signature. A very nice club, a little bit of a wing back echo there. It's not a split sole, it's a muscle back style club. The grip is the same as the woods, a generic replacement grip. So that's the 2 iron. We'll then take a look at the 4 iron, and we can see that this one is MTR1. So this is a stiff flex club. And if we look at the shaft band, it does indeed say 1. So it's quite an odd set really. The whippiest clubs are the woods, and the irons are the stiffest, which goes against the normal, or what we tend to do today, where we tend to have stiffer shafts in the woods. We look at the ferrule here, we can see that it has separated. We've also got some rust there. I can clean that off and it won't look too bad. The serial numbers all match in the set. I'm not sure about the 2 iron. Let me just have a look at that. The 2 iron is a different number, so whether that was acquired separately or not, I don't know. And then if we just have a quick look at the pitching wedge, that's very similar, but it's just a flat back design pitching wedge McGregor. So they're the irons. As you can see, I've not got a sand wedge in the set, so to fill that gap I'm going to use a Mizuno TP9 tour proven sand wedge. There we go, TP9. And to complete things, the putter. I don't have a McGregor putter. This is a Spalding cash-in. Lovely putter. Very popular in its day, with good reason. It's a centre shafted putter. Nice weight to it. So there we go. Well, that pretty much rounds up part 1. Here are the lofts for the clubs, which you'll see me playing in part 2. As I mentioned, I'm not going to be playing the woods, so these are just the irons. Well, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing you in part 2. Bye!